And next up, let's get to our next session for this morning before we head to our coffee break. So Jamie Demora is CTO for startups and digital natives at Microsoft EMEA. He's going to take us into the agentic era and continue this conversation. Software that doesn't wait for users' input. It's software that understands goals, reasons, and acts. It's already here. It's not coming. So this session is about what CTOs need to do right now to prepare. Jamie.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie, and I lead the CTO practice at Microsoft for the startups and the unicorns division. So I'm fortunate enough to actually work with the most disruptive and innovative companies across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And in the last 3 years, it's all been about either infusing AI to traditional SaaS companies or to actually help scale AI and agentic native ones. So that's what I'm going to be covering today. What are the best practices that I see, and also how software itself is actually being reinvented. And we need to think about it differently, how we architect it, how we design it, and how we even measure it. So what we're going to be covering today, 5 sections. First of all, it's the new agentic reality and why the economics have actually and dramatically changed. Then we're going to go from a bit of a history tour through the evolution of software in the last 30 years. Then we're actually going to be covering the agentic stack, and I'm going to be using 3 specific customer real stories that I'm going to walk you through and how their architecture actually looks like. Then, what are the steps that you can take if you have a traditional SaaS product in order to actually infuse not just AI, but agentic capabilities? And we're going to finish again with some best practices and takeaways that hopefully will help you again to move forward your agentic practice or development in your product. Just want to mention that I'm actually in 2 months, I'm co-authoring this book about building agentic applications on Azure, and many of the learnings as well that came from that book and coming from my customers are going to be positioned in this talk. So I'm going to start actually with this dashboard, the Lean AI leaderboard. Has anyone seen it before? Good, just 1 person, 2, good. So basically what it does, it ranks the most capital efficient companies. Capital efficiency right now is the #1 metric that VCs and the market are looking for. And there's a clear trend. If we take out Telegram, which we know is an outlier, most of the companies in this leaderboard are actually agentic by design. And that's not a coincidence. It's just the evidence that right now agentic companies are becoming the new operating model for high-performance technical or tech companies. And that's also compressing the time frame for software. So there's this new mantra in Silicon Valley that talks about the 2-year startup. So before it took us between 5 to 7 years to actually get to an exit. Now we see how, again, times are compressing. We see companies in 3 months building out of subsidized compute and off-the-shelf models, building really great products and raising amazing rounds of funding. We see how actually they build a moat already through data and through interoperability and custom logic already in months 3 to 6. And then already by month 24, there's a consolidation in the market. We've never seen this before in the world of software. And what this means is that just the pace and the velocity is changing. And we need to adapt to this new reality. So this is how I see right now the software landscape. Very quickly, model builders. Basically, you can think about the Mistrals, the OpenAI of the world, Stability.ai. All of them are actually becoming right now as well agentic companies. Think about the Dream Studio from Stability.ai, the agentic platform from OpenAI, or think about eventually the ones from 11 Labs as well that are getting more into agents. Then you have the native agentic companies, and all of them are extremely fast. They're building on top of state-of-the-art models, and their moat and their value lies mostly, again, on the application layer. But then you have the traditional SaaS, and those are the ones that are trying to not just, again, infuse AI to their product, but, again, to become agentic companies. But they're struggling in many ways. Either they are struggling, again, from a technological standpoint, or also they cannot really define the ROI in a clear way. But the truth is that every company right now wants to become an agentic company. So we've come a long way from software that actually was very heavy on clicks, software in which actually the reasoning came from the user that's tried to navigate and make their way through highly complex UIs and dashboards. And it was all about the clicks. So think about all the potential automation that we can actually achieve right now through agents. It is true that most companies right now have already embedded AI to an extent to their products. And what that means is that they're doing already probably retrieval augmented generation. So if you look at this example, yes, the agent already makes some semantic search through a database, performs the answer to the user, but then it tells him, hey, you now need to open a ticket. So that's not full autonomy. That's just assistance. But now what we're going through is, again, full autonomy. And that happens because of many reasons, but mostly because of three. The first one is that LLMs and agents are extremely good at understanding unstructured data. You can just get a structured JSON out of any prompt or any query to a database. You also have very strong tool robustness. Right now, you don't need to have a perfect UI. Agents can actually navigate, and even they can afford, and this is the third point as well, they can face novel cases. That is something that they could not do before. You don't need to actually prepare for every edge case. Agents can actually reason and behave and adapt according to the context. So zooming out for 30 seconds, this is actually the evolution that we've seen in just the last, let's say, 5 years. We've seen again how the operator before, it was the user. He or she was the one actually providing the reasoning and trying again to navigate that software. Then it was AI-assisted software. And now the operator, we see that it's not actually the humans in many cases. The operators of software are being agents. And that's again how we've come from a world in which humans needed to adapt to highly complex and sometimes even clunky software to right now software that fully adapts to human preferences and needs. And what this means is that also we're making significant changes to our product architectures. Right now, SaaS was optimized around user sessions and user runs, but now everything is around actually outcomes and long-lived executions actually that start with intent and end with verifiable outcomes. That's something that SaaS had a hard time actually accomplishing. The second one is that the unit right now of measure is a run. We need to ensure that our agents can actually perform actions on our behalf. They actually can decide what actions to take. And it's not just about stateless APIs anymore. It's about context management. It's about ensuring that the agent performs the right or takes the right step on action on every step of the way. Another big change is again on the data layer. Agents are not good at reasoning over tables and rows and tickets and logs. We need to build a semantic layer. That's something we cover later as well. And then last but not least, normally we don't see that much anymore, traditional companies following traditional QA. Now evaluation actually starts at the very beginning, and it actually becomes like a gating function for software. So if we go and look at the architecture and how does an agentic architecture look like, the first thing I'll mention is that companies don't need, and this is something that I talk to a lot of CTOs, companies don't need to actually throw away all their SaaS, or they don't need to re-architect their existing SaaS. They need to think how to build on top of it. Okay, and if you think about just the user experience, yes, before it was all about navigation, now it's more about user intent and assistance. And yes, now it's about not just text and forms, it's actually about video, images, text, or voice. But the core change right now, and as you can see, the agentic orchestration service is on top of the application platform, is that orchestration service is the brains of the software. In the same way that before it was actually the human providing the reasoning, now is that orchestration service. And it's important, I will just talk about three main layers. First one is the policy. And the policy is that enforcement layer that decides what can the agent do, when, and actually when does the human need to make a decision. Then you have the memory that is actually what keeps everything together, provides the full context across different threads and sessions to ensure that the agent provides the right response or performs the right action. And then last one is the tool calling and code execution environment. That's that's the execution layer. Right now, that is actually evolving into skills, which we'll see in a second, but that's also one of the most important ones. Just want to mention as well external systems. Interoperability is a key component right now in agentic systems. If your agents cannot operate with other tools or other agents, probably you're losing distribution. So that's the stack. And now I want to drill down into 4 core pillars that actually are making it or breaking it for most SaaS companies. The first one is the data layer. So most companies try to just point their agents to their traditional databases. And as mentioned before, agents are not really good at reasoning over tables or rows. You need to actually expose them again to a semantic layer. They're not good at just a SaaS. Eventually, you would query a database, but agents need, again, for example, to understand the difference between a customer entity in Salesforce and an account in Zendesk. And it might be the same. So you need to think about, first of all, how to actually connect all the different data sources you have, whether that's on Slack, on Notion, on SharePoint, on many other multiple disparate data sources. You then need to unify them by domain. What that means is that you don't want your agents pointing to 14 different tables, but you want to create an entire canonical view that your agents can actually reason over. And then eventually, yes, you have the semantic layer as well, where you will have not only embeddings. Embeddings is one step, but eventually you want to create your own vector index. You want to create as well your own ontology. You want to eventually also reindex and provide the freshness to the data so the agent can constantly query that or retrieve the right information. The second one is interoperability, because as I mentioned before, you definitely want your agents, one, to be able to, for them to be consumed by third-party systems, and second, you want them as well to consume those third-party systems or communicate and interact with agents. And in that regard, protocols like MCP or A2A are actually really important. They reduce the cost of integration, and they make these ecosystems possible. The third one is skills, and let me maybe just explain why right now they're like the hottest thing in the last 3 months. And that's just because they're way beyond what we thought about tool calling, or eventually some people even call it like an advanced API, and it's way more. I like to see it as an executional capability with operational guarantees. So in the skills, yes, you do call to different tools and you allow the agent to perform different tasks, but also you provide the interface contract. What are the inputs and outputs on those skills? You provide as well the policy and the permissions for the agents to perform those actions in a safe way. You even provide the operational envelope, the documentation. So at the end, they encapsulate, as you can see, if we think about a product marketer, they encapsulate everything that a product marketer could do if we think about market research. So for a marketer to perform market research as a skill, you would need eventually to look for information on the internet, to actually retrieve data from different knowledge bases, create content. There are multiple things that you would do, but you want to define again how does the agent perform those actions. And the last one is something that is killing a lot of SaaS companies, which is how they measure success. So SaaS, again, mostly tracked human interactions in their software. So it was mostly around daily active users, time in application, and that is totally changing. Right now, it's actually around work completed. If you think about an agent like Intercom's Fin, it doesn't measure how many tickets does it actually support a human. It measures tickets completed or to resolution, and it actually charges based on that. So we're not going to get into outcome-based pricing, which is probably the next big thing in software, but it's about measuring things like task completion, time to resolution, cost per task as well, because that's going to define the unit economics of your software. So we need to change the scorecard. Interestingly enough, the thing is, the better the metrics on the left-hand side, the worse the ones on the right-hand side. So you might even think that you're getting churn because your software is not getting used as much, but that means that the end customer is getting more value. With that, what are the things that eventually companies can start doing today to design for SaaS products? And I'm going to try to specify it in a concrete workflow. Let's say a customer onboarding agent, okay, that takes care of the entire workflow because that improves identity, data, approvals, connections with external systems. The first one is that agents fail when the job is ambiguous. So let's be sure that you actually define very well what the agent needs to do, and you define as well very clear success metrics. It's important as well to define the autonomy boundary. You want to be sure, again, what the agent can do versus when does the human need to actually get into the loop. You need to also be able to configure that autonomy and boundary by tenant, by role, and even sometimes by risk appetite. It's not the same if you're working with enterprise customers or SMBs. That really depends. Then the second one is that agents actually fail when execution is unsafe. So if you're thinking about this onboarding agent, it will want to provision IT resources, open email addresses. You don't want to expose your production environments to that, right? Or your production database for that. So it's important, again, to really contain and ensure what can the agent access. That's why exposing capabilities of your software via tools or APIs is going to really also create guardrails for that agent to execute on. And one very important thing to say is like never rely on the model itself for security. Okay, it's important again to think about network boundaries, identity, permissions. All of those need to actually be configured when you think about agentic systems. Then the third one is design for semantic retrieval. As mentioned, creating embeddings or having embeddings of specific tables or databases in your system, that's a good first step. But you need to think as well, how can you actually create canonical views on top of your data, how you can actually link entities, how can you actually verticalize by domain so agents can reason over that data. And last but not least is how do you put everything into production? And that's again by adding an entire orchestration layer. Because these agentic workflows eventually are going to take 20, 30, 40, 50 steps. And you want to be sure that if something fails on step 27, the task doesn't fail immediately. You have a retry logic already built into the system. You can actually, if there's no availability of a specific model, you actually have a fallback model as well. And that you have full traceability of what is the agent doing at every step of the way. So also, traceability and observability are absolutely crucial when you build that that orchestration layer. So with that, let me just walk you quickly, because I'm running out of time, on three real-world scenarios of companies, all SaaS unicorns from Europe that have successfully moved to agentic. The first one is Factorial. They're a business management solution, 130 million in revenue, growing extremely 80% year over year. And what they basically did, they created this solution called Factorial One. And it actually acts on behalf of the user, both on HR functions, IT, and business management and processes. Three things I want everyone to look at. The first one is when we talk about interoperability. As you can see, Factorial is actually being consumed, One is being consumed from different systems or interfaces, because they don't care about what the interface is. They care about their capabilities and skills being consumed. So you can actually access it from the Factorial website. It could be through M365 Copilot, could be via Teams, or even right now they're opening it through WhatsApp. Second thing to mention is actually the orchestration layer. They use Mastra and Azure Foundry for that. And what they have done on that orchestration layer, aside from actually, and that's a simplified view, aside from defining the entire logic, is they have exposed every department has actually exposed their skills, so they can be consumed again by their agents. And then third is the fact that their SaaS still is exposed as an API that the agent can consume. So that's something really important. Next one is Contract.ai, contract lifecycle management software, one of the leading players globally, and they have gone full into agentic AI to the extent that they have rebranded themselves into Leah. And three things I want to mention as well here. The first one is that if you think about legal work, it's inherently cross-system. So they have actually, because contracts live everywhere, right? They live in ERPs, CRMs. So they have actually made interoperability a big pillar or foundation of their entire agentic system. The second one is, and you can see it here on the box, is how actually they have exposed all their agent capabilities as skills as well, whether that's contract creation, contract management, payables and receivables, all of them were exposed as skills. And the third one is unified semantics, because also legal work is language-heavy work, and you need to be sure that you actually have access to the right information. So they have actually created their own ontology and semantic layer for the agents to reason over. The last one is Backbase. It's a global fintech company that provides a digital banking platform for banks over the world. They also have gone full into agentic, and here at least what I want to show you is, first you see here their entire stack, but important things to mention, and I will just mention two for the sake of time. The first one is on the agent orchestration. Again, it's fully decoupled from the rest. They're using LangChain in this case, and that's again where the entire runtime and logic actually happens. But then they have decoupled every component. I think it's interesting as well to look at the interchangeability of the models. They use OpenAI models, they use Anthropic models, they have their own models as well that they have used, and the system runs exactly the same regardless of the models they're using. So with that, just key takeaways. The first one is, again, start with one workflow end to end, one high-value process, whether that's ticket resolution, compliance check, but start with one process and instrument it heavily. The second one is turn your product into skills. Try it to make it operable by agents and third-party systems. The third one is build evaluation before autonomy. Evaluation and creating your own evaluation pipeline is absolutely crucial. Whether you want to create your own evaluation pipeline, or you want to eventually leverage existing frameworks and use other models as a judge, that's extremely important. And also make it part of your CI/CD pipelines. Fourth one, make your data agent ready. We covered that already. But the fifth one is design for outcomes, not usage. So if your product reduces time in app, that might actually be a good outcome and not a bad result for your SaaS. One final thought I want to finish with, because I had the entire talk ready like a month ago, but then OpenClaw came out. And software, the world of software absolutely changed. So we've been talking about agents being the operators of software. And we've been talking about as well SaaS interfaces changing to adapt to this new trend. But your existing SaaS might actually hold way more value than you think. I wouldn't rush companies to just throw away their entire business logic, or at least put it into an agents.md and into a long system prompt. Just wait, because things are moving so fast, and especially we see how AI agents are evolving so rapidly that with projects like OpenClaw, for example, we've seen how they can operate highly complex SaaS directly, and they can navigate a 200-step workflow without any problem. And that's, again, why you should think that you might not want to rebuild everything from scratch, especially those highly complex workflows and business logic. So there are actually two paths to defensibility here. One is that you can expose your product capabilities as agent consumable skills. That's one. But then second, is that your own product's complexity might become the moat itself and the differentiation, because reproducing that entire complexity from scratch is going to be extremely hard in an agentic world. So in any case, your product logic is going to become the advantage. So just to finish, I think that the strategic question is, like, do you want to expose your platform and your product again to other agent platforms to consume? Or do you eventually want to become the agent platform of your domain? I think that's the question that many CTOs and CPOs are asking themselves right now. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time. I don't know if we have time for questions, but it's been a pleasure being with all of you here today. Thank you very much.